Hello and welcome to this video on biblical numerics. In this video we'll be examining a numerical pattern that exists in the King James Bible, and to assist me with that I'll be using a video from the YouTube channel Truth is Christ titled Urgent New Discovery in the First and Last Verses of the King James Bible. You can find a link for that video in the description.
Do you know who Jesus Christ is outside of this book? That's a very serious question you need to think about. Do you know anything about Jesus Christ outside of this book? This is important to God. This is how God revealed himself to us.
Remember the former things of old, for I am God and there is none else. I am God and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, My counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure.
Let's look at Isaiah 46 verse 9. Notice here that the word remembered using this reverse English cipher has a value of 137. That is a very important number in the creation and is related to the fine structure constant. On the right is the standard English cipher, which follows the pattern of the standard Hebrew and Greek isopsephy. But using that cipher, the phrase, none like me, has a value of 274, and that is 137 times 2. Let's examine some of the former things of old. Shown here is Genesis 1:1 in the original Hebrew. Now this verse, using the standard Hebrew cipher shown here, has a value of 2,701. That is 37 times 73. And 2,701 is the 73rd triangular number. And as I said earlier, it's the product of the numbers 37 and 73, both of which are star numbers. Now I'm saying all this to lay the groundwork for some amazing patterns that you'll see in this video. Now the first verse of the Bible in the Hebrew uses exactly 11 of the 22 Hebrew letters. And notice that the phrase Jesus Christ contains 11 letters. But if we look at the 11 letters that do not occur in Genesis 1:1 and we sum them up, you'll get the number 411, and 411 is 137 times 3. And 411 happens to be the value of Genesis 1:1 in the English using the cipher shown here, the ordinal English. And the reverse English has a value of 777. There is a fascinating relationship between the numbers shown here, as well as another number that I'll discuss later on in this video. This is something I'm currently working on. But in this video, we're going to really focus on the number 17 and the number 27 to a lesser extent. We will be counting things in our Bible, certain words and phrases. For example, here in Isaiah 46:10, the word stand occurs 274 times in the King James Bible. That is 137 times 2.
The first and last verses of the King James Bible. So 44 letters in Genesis 1:1, the first verse of the Bible. 44 letters in Revelation 22:21, the last verse of the Bible. So 44 letters in each. So the fact that you have the exact same count as in Genesis 1:1, the first verse of the Bible, that in itself should be interesting and should at least make you want to inquire further.
Now the number 44 is the product of 4 and 11. 4 times 11 is 44. Easy enough. But if we take 4 and we square it, and we take the number 11 and we square it, and we combine them, we get the number 137. And the first phrase in the Bible in the beginning has an ordinal English value of 137.
And then once you do inquire further, you run into this pattern of 17 and 27. So 17 vowels in both Genesis 1:1 and Revelation 22:21, and there's 27 consonants in both of those verses. So they perfectly match by the letter. Here we have the first and last verses of the Bible. Now, what I was doing was, I was basically looking at how this pattern of 17 and 27, it's not just with the vowels and the consonants. And before I even get into that, if this stuff is just like, you're like, what is this person doing? First of all, Jesus Christ is the Alpha and the Omega. Second of all, Jesus Christ emphasized the jot and the tittle. So, by the way, Alpha and Omega are letters in the Greek alphabet. They're letters. Jesus Christ associates himself with the first and last letters. The tittle is smaller than a letter. It's the finest of details.
Now, triangular numbers are very important in the Bible. For example, the Trinity, the Father, the Word, the Holy Ghost. 3 is a triangular number. Genesis 1:1 contains 10 words. 10 is a triangular number. There are 66 books in the Bible. 66 is 11th triangular number. Now, if we make a cipher using the triangular numbers, you'll see that the phrase I am has a value of 137. Now, Jesus is the Alpha and Omega, and Alpha occurs in your King James Bible, Psalm 119, verse 1, as Aleph in the Hebrew. Blessed are the undefiled in the way who walk in the law of the Lord. The phrase the law occurs 137 times in the Old Testament, and the phrase of the Lord occurs 137 times in the New Testament.
In Proverbs 25:2, it says, "It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out a matter." People often say, well, why would God conceal the perfect Bible until today? Why wouldn't he? Who's to say he didn't? He concealed Jesus Christ from the entire world, from all mankind. And God just does this type of thing a lot. Like, he will conceal something, and when the time is right, he'll put things into effect the way that he has planned them. So that's kind of the same type of thing we're dealing with here. And what's interesting here is we're dealing with the first and last verses of the Bible, and these two numbers, 17 and 27, when they first show up in the Bible, they are directly connected to each other as the first and the last days of the waters of the flood of Noah.
If we examine Proverbs 25:2 a little closely, you'll see that the phrase glory of God has a value of 146 using the reverse cipher. That's the same as the value of the phrase Jesus Christ using the same cipher. And 146 is 73 times 2. The word kings occurs in 274 verses of the Old Testament. That is 137 times 2. And the word honor occurs 146 times in the Old Testament. Now, God has numerically encoded Jesus Christ in the King James Bible from Genesis 1:1 to Revelation 22:21. And we see an example of that in Romans 16:25. The phrase establish you has the exact numerical value as the phrase Jesus Christ.
And there's not many numbers that you can just pull out and say, okay, these two numbers are mentioned in the Bible and they're associated with each other, literally connected to each other, and they're talking about the first and the last of something. How many numbers could you do that with? It's just crazy the way that God has done all this. So 17 first shows up in Genesis 7:11. It's the first mention that 17 is in the Bible. And this is when the flood of Noah begins. And we'll start at verse 10 in chapter 7 of Genesis. It says, "And it came to pass after 7 days," there's God's favorite number 7, "that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month." There's that first mention of 17 in the Bible. You won't find that number of 17 in the text anywhere else before this place in the scriptures.
The word 17th has a value of 137, and the word opened occurs exactly 137 times in the King James Bible. I will quickly show you how the number 17 is related to the numbers 73 and 137. Here I have taken the reciprocal of the number 17, which is to say I've divided 1 by 17, and when you do that you get this repeating decimal digits. It's a sort of a long sequence. It begins with the number 58 and ends with 47. Here is that number, and you can see that that number is a multiple of the numbers 73 and 137. So not only is there a gematria relationship between 17 and 137, but there's a simple mathematical relationship as well. Now, if we look at Matthew 24, verses 36 through 39, notice some interesting numerical patterns here. Knoweth no man has a value of 153. We're going to go to John 21, the 153 great fishes. Verse 37, the days of Noe has a value of 137. And in verse 39, the phrase, the Son of Man be, has a value of 137.
Now, if you flip over your pages until you get to chapter 8, and you go to verse 14, it says, "And in the 2nd month, on the 27th day of the month," there is that first mention of 27 in the Bible. was the earth dried. So all the water begins. All the waters of the flood of Noah begins on the 17th day and ends on the 27th day.
Now, if we use the reverse cipher and we take the numerical value of 17th, which is 160, and combine that with the numerical value of 7 and 20th, we get the number 411, 137 times 3, which is also the value of Genesis 1:1 in the Ordinal English. Now, if we divide 17 by 27, you get this sequence of decimal digits shown here. You can see this 629, 629 repeated. Well, that's 37 times 17. And if you start beginning at the second number, you get 296. That's 37 times 8. And then if you start from the third digit, you get 962. And that's 37 times 26. So my point is that the numbers 17, 27, 73 and 137 are related.
And as it was in the days of Noe, so shall it be also in the days of the Son of Man. They did eat, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage, until the day that Noe entered into the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all.
So that's 17 and that 27.
So if we look at Luke 17, 26 and 27, of course we see the days of Noe again. The phrase they drank using the reverse is 137. Married wives is 146. That's 73 times 2. And the phrase the day that Noe is 146. Now, the numbers 73 and 137 are also mathematically related. You can see that for yourselves if you take the reciprocal of those numbers like we did the number 17.
And go try to find out if in the Bible, when they're first mentioned, they're connected to each other, and if they're first mentioned, they're connected to each other as the first and the last of something. I challenge you to do that and to come up with anything. So here we're dealing with Genesis 1:1 and Revelation 22:21. Now it's not just the vowels and the consonants.
If we go to Genesis 22:21, we'll see that the phrase "be with you all" has value of 153. The number 153 is the 17th triangular number, and again, the word 17th has a value of 137. So we're seeing this relationship between 17, 153, 137. And you can include the number 777 into that discussion. And we had already seen that it's the reverse of Genesis 1:1 in the Ordinal English. And here if we use the standard cipher, Revelation 22:21 has a value of 3,885, which is 777 times 5. Why 5? Jesus, 5 letters. Grace, 5 letters.
To notice something with the 17 and the 27 yesterday. So I was starting to notice how the first 17 letters of Genesis 1:1 literally takes you to God, to the full phrase of "in the beginning, God." So that's a perfect 17 letters. In Revelation 22:21, you get a perfect 27 letters starting with Jesus. So Jesus Christ be with you all, amen. So Genesis 1:1 gives you a perfect beginning of 17 letters. Revelation 22:21 gives you a perfect ending of 27 letters. There again is that pattern of the 17th day and the 27th day, so the beginning and then the ending. If you look at the first 27 letters of Genesis 1:1, there's 17 consonants in those 27 letters. So in the beginning, God created the. And the same thing with those last 27 letters in Revelation 22:21. You get 27 letters and 17 consonants. The last 7 words of the Bible form 27 letters, 17 consonants. Then I noticed with that pattern, with the remainder of those 17 letters that are left, each of them have 7 vowels in them.
Let's go to the 17th verse of the Gospel of Mark, Mark 1:17. And Jesus said unto them, "Come ye after me, and I will make you to become fishers of men." The phrase fishers of men has a value of 137. If we go to John chapter 21 and we look at the first 3 verses, we'll see some interesting patterns. The phrase "the sea of," the reverse has a value of 137. Peter occurs in 153 verses of the King James Bible. The phrase "a fishing" has a value of 73. And the word "caught" occurs exactly 37 times in the King James Bible. Now let's get some meat. John 21 verse 5. Then Jesus saith unto them, "Children, have ye any meat?" They answered him, "No." The word "children" has a value of 73, and the phrase "have ye any," using the reverse, is 137. And the word Meat occurs in 274 verses of the King James Bible, 137 times 2. Verse 6, and he said unto them, cast the net on the right side of the ship, and ye shall find. They cast therefore, and now they were not able to draw it for the multitude of fishes. Now the word right has a reverse value of 73, and the word side has an ordinal value of 37. And the phrase of the ship has a reverse value of 137. Now the number 37 and the related number 137 are encoded in the King James Bible from cover to cover. Now look, the phrase cast the occurs exactly 17 times in the King James Bible. Now the last mention of ship is in the 44th book of the Bible. That would be the book of Acts. And we'll be looking at Acts chapter 27 here shortly. John 21:11. Simon Peter went up and drew the net to land full of great fishes, 153, and for all there were so many, yet was not the net broken. The phrase the net broken has a value of 137. Now let's take a little detour, and we're going to go to Acts chapter 27, and then we'll look at John chapter 6 briefly, and then we'll come back to John 21. Let's go to Acts 27, pick it up in verse 25. Wherefore, sirs, be of good cheer, for I believe God, that it shall be even as it was told me. Howbeit, we must be cast upon a certain island. Notice that the phrase, we must be cast, is the exact value of the phrase Jesus Christ, which is 151. The first phrase in the Bible, case sensitive, in the, occurs exactly 151 times in the King James Bible. Verse 27, but when the 14th night was come, as we were driven up and down in Adria, about midnight, the shipmen deemed that they drew near to some country. The number 14, a very interesting number. Go to Matthew 1:17, the 14 generations of Jesus Christ. But that phrase using the standard is 1,137. Not a multiple of 137, but it's interesting nonetheless. And the word night has a value of 274, 137 times 2. Verse 31, Paul said to the centurion and to the soldiers, except these abide in the ship, ye cannot be saved. That's like Noah's ark. You have to be on the ark. You have to be on the ark of Jesus Christ, the ship of Jesus Christ. The phrase Paul said to the has a value of 151, like the phrase Jesus Christ. And if we look at the standard, the phrase Paul said has a value of 515, the value of the name Jesus using the standard. And the word except you be born again, has a ordinal value of 73 and a reverse value of 89. There are 89 chapters in the four Gospels. John 21 is the 89th chapter, and the first day of creation consists of exactly 89 words, and the 73rd word is the word day, which is the name for light. And of course, the day is a picture of Jesus Christ. Verse 33, and while the day was coming on, Paul besought them all to take meat, saying, this day is the 14th day that ye have tarried and continued fasting, having taken nothing. The phrase, the day was, using the reverse, 137. The word take has a value of 37. Again, we saw meat has a value of occurs in 274 verses of the King James Bible, a multiple of 137. And that phrase, ye have, occurs 153 times in the New Testament in 137 verses. Verse 34, wherefore I pray you to take some meat, for this is for your health, for there shall not an hair fall from the head of any of you. The phrase take some has a value of 89. Again, 89 chapters in the four Gospels. Your health, look at the reverse, 137. And notice we are in Acts 27, the 27 consonants that Brandon pointed out in the first and last verses of the Bible. Now this meat is a picture of Jesus Christ. Look at verse 35. And when he had thus spoken, he took bread and gave thanks to God in presence of them all. And when he had broken it, he began to eat. The word gave, reverse value of 73. To God's exactly the reverse of Jesus Christ, 74:61, as you can see here, and the phrase to eat likewise. And the word began occurs in 74 verses of the New Testament, the value of the name Jesus. So let's go to the 74th chapter of the New Testament, John chapter 6, pick it up in verse 27. Labor not for the meat which perisheth, but for that meat which endureth unto everlasting life, which the Son of Man shall give unto you, for him hath God the Father sealed. The meat which endureth has a value of 274 using the reverse, the same number as verses that the word meat occurs in. The phrase, for him hath God, has a value of 219. That is 73 times 3. And look at that phrase, the Father sealed, using the ordinal, 137. Let's pick it up in verse 32. Then Jesus said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, Moses gave you not that bread from heaven, but my Father giveth you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he which cometh down from heaven, and giveth life unto the world. Then said they unto him, Lord evermore, give us this bread. The reverse of Moses gave has a value of 137, and bread from heaven, using the ordinal, 137. Now look at verse 51. I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If any man eat of this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world. The word living has a value of 73. That phrase, any man, occurs in 137 verses of the King James Bible. And look at that phrase, live forever, 137. Now let's go back to Acts 27, pick it up in verse 36. Then were they all of good cheer, and they also took some meat, and we were in all in the ship 216 souls. Look at that phrase, and they also took some meat, has a value of 276, exactly the same as the number of souls that were in the ship. And look at that phrase, in the, occurs in 777 verses of the New Testament. And the numerical value of verse 37, using the ordinal English, has a value of 703, which is the 37th triangular number. Now let's go back to John 21, pick it up in verse 9. As soon then as they were come to land, they saw a fire of coals there, and fish laid thereon, and bread. Jesus saith unto them, Bring of the fish which ye have now caught. Look at that phrase, fish laid thereon, has a value of 153. Bring of the fish has a value of 146, the same as the reverse of Jesus Christ. And again, that phrase, ye have, 153 mentions in the New Testament in 137 verses. And if we look at the next 3 verses, there's some interesting patterns here. The word taketh occurs 74 times in the King James Bible. The phrase and giveth, the reverse of that is 153. And the phrase Jesus showed himself has a value of 276, using the reverse. The 276 souls saved in Acts 27. Now let's go to the 17th verse. He saith unto him the third time, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me? Peter was grieved because he said unto him the third time, Lovest thou me? And he said unto him, Lord, thou knowest all things. Thou knowest that I love thee. Jesus said unto them, Feed my sheep. Now this phrase, third times, occurred more than once in this chapter, but the reverse of that has value of 137, and knowest all things, using the standard cipher, is 1,370.
So anyways, something else that kind of drew me into that was the 777th chapter of the Bible. And I'm not sure if I can even put into words if there's anything specifically going on here, but if you go there, it's Jeremiah 32. This is the 777th chapter of the Bible. If you look in verse 9, it says, And I bought the field of Hanameel, my uncle's son, that was in Anathoth, and weighed him the money, even 17 shekels of silver. So that number 17 shows up in this chapter. Now the number 27 does not, but the number 17 does, and number 17 rarely shows up in the Bible. However, the interesting thing about this chapter is that it has 44 verses in it. So if you look, the last verse of the 777th chapter is 44 verses. And if you look in the 17th verse and the 27th verse of this chapter, I don't know if there's anything to this or not, but I think there is, based off of this pattern that we're seeing here. It says, verse 17 says this, Ah, Lord God, behold, thou hast made the heaven and the earth by thy great power and stretched out arm, and there is nothing too hard for thee. So we're dealing with the creation of heaven and earth, and then we're dealing with that phrase that says, and there is nothing too hard for thee. Now if you go to verse 27 of the 777th chapter, it says, "Behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is there anything too hard for me?" And one of the biggest, and so that's verse 17 and 27, and this chapter has 44 verses. We're literally looking at kind of like an expanded pattern of those numbers that we see with the first and last verses of the Bible.
Okay, let's finish off this video in Jeremiah 32. We'll pick it up in verse 6. And Jeremiah said, "The word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Behold, Hanamiel, the son of Shallum, thine uncle, shall come unto thee, saying, Buy thee my field that is in Anathoth, for the right of redemption is thine to buy it." Look how Jesus Christ is encoded in all this. My field, 74. Jesus, 74. Buy it, 77. Christ, 77. Now if we look at verse 9, "And I bought the field of Hanamiel, my uncle's son, that was in Anathoth, and weighed him the money, even 17 shekels of silver." The phrase 17 shekels has a value of 188, the same as the phrase Jesus of Nazareth. Verse 10, "And I subscribed the evidence and sealed it, and took witnesses and weighed him the money in the balances. So I took the evidence of the purchase, both that which was sealed according to the law and custom, and that which was open." The phrase "subscribe the evidence" has a value of 365, the number of days in a year. That's using the reverse, but that is 73 times 5. Now the word "weighed" occurs 17 times in the King James Bible. The phrase "the money" occurs in 37 verses of the King James Bible. Look at that. The word "according" equals 74, like the name Jesus. And we saw earlier the phrase "the law" occurs 137 times in the Old Testament. Verse 12, "And I gave the evidence of the purchase unto Baruch, the son of Neriah, the son of Maaseiah, in the sight of Hanamiel, mine uncle's son, and in the presence of the witnesses that subscribed the book of the purchase before all the Jews that sat in the court of the prison." The phrase "in the sight" has a value of 151 using the reverse, the value of Jesus Christ using the ordinal. The phrase "book of the purchase" has a value of 188, like Jesus of Nazareth, and the word "book" occurs exactly 188 times in the King James Bible. Verse 17, "Ah, Lord God, behold, thou hast made the heaven and the earth by thy great power and stretched out arm, and there is nothing too hard for thee." Now the reverse standard of God has a value of 730, and that word "behold," case sensitive, occurs exactly 730 times in the King James Bible. But you can see it for yourselves. Jesus Christ is encoded in this book. 74, 77 is shown here. Nothing too has a value of 137. Let's look at verse 27. "Behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is there anything too hard for me?" The phrase "I am the Lord" has a value of 777 using the trigonal cipher. As Brandon pointed out, this is the 777th chapter of the Bible. But if we look at the ordinal of "Behold, I am the Lord," it has a value of 151, just like the phrase Jesus Christ. Again, Jesus Christ is encoded in this Bible, cover to cover. That is the King James Bible. And that's all I have for now. Remember, there's a link to Brandon's full video in the description. God bless, and bye for now.